still basking in it. It is now, I don't know how long it's been. It hasn't even been 48 hours yet since the final putt dropped in on the 16th in the playoff. But wow, what a World Championships finish. What an incredible moment. I put up an Instagram post, Josh, on, I think, Thursday or Friday, and I said, hole 18 is going to be special during the final round, with a picture of the bleachers and, you know, people sitting there in the fairway. And people have gone back and been like, this aged well. Indeed. Welcome to the Upshot. I'm Charlie Eisenhood. He is Josh Mansfield. And we are going to continue to recap the World Championships here now that we've had a little bit of time, at least, to digest some of this stuff. I mean, we have at least 2 more shows where we're going to be tackling World's topics, maybe more. There's so much to talk about, and we're going to get to, you know, an hour's worth of it today, and then we'll see what we can do on Thursday's show, and we'll probably have even more, and plus some interviews coming up later this week or early next. Obviously, we've got the 4th of July holiday coming up, so our first show next week may be delayed, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, let's get into it. Wow. Once again, if you're just catching up, you're under a rock at this point, right? The footage is out. Everything's there. You got to watch it. No spoilers. James Conrad, Katrina Allen, your 2021 world champions. And I mean, it's just been unbelievable. We already talked in our round 5 recap show, which we highly encourage you to go check out, all about the James Conrad shot from the fairway on 18. So, you know, we'll be talking about it in passing here today, but go listen to that if you want our reactions and reactions from many listeners. And so let's dig into some of these stories. And the first thing I want to talk a little bit about is James Conrad, and what an amazing performance that he was able to put together, and obviously hitting the miracle shot on 18. But when you go back and you look, Josh, at this tournament and the way it played out, it's so remarkable in some ways. He and Paul McBeth on the scorecards this week were never separated by more than a stroke in any of their rounds. In round 1, Conrad shot a 50, McBeth shot a 51. Then they were back to even after round 2. They both shot a 52 in round 3. James Conrad falls behind by a stroke in round 4, and then obviously gets the stroke back literally on 18, and then wins in the playoff, which means his only time leading the tournament, Josh, was after winning on the playoff hole. He never led before that moment. And somebody asked in the Discord, has that ever happened before? It's almost impossible to go back in time and figure that out. But my guess is no. My guess is that this is basically never happened. I mean, to not win until the playoff, to not get to even, you know, like, and have outright lead until the playoff, like after 5 rounds, or in the past, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 rounds. Unbelievable.
On hole 13, James had clawed his way back up because he fell a little bit off the pace. Almost, I think, 3 strokes back at one point.
He was 4 strokes back.
4 strokes back. Four strokes back. Holes. Yeah. So 4 strokes back. And he claws his way back up so that through the really tough 11, 12, 13 stretch, James gets tied with McBeth. Which, not to discredit, Paul's off the fence zone bounce shot on hole 12, which was, I was watching him, I was standing behind him watching him line that shot up, and I was like, where in the world is this man about to throw this frisbee? Off the fence is the answer. But hole 13, Paul is 3 feet in front of James's drive, and this is the one that has the creek behind it, and James lays up, and Paul steps up and cashes it. And it was at that moment I thought the tournament was over. I thought that stroke difference on these back holes, and I knew anything could happen on the back, the back 4 or 5 holes, and they did. Anything did happen. But at that moment when James laid up, it felt, I mean, Emerson Keith's interview came to mind with Paul just saying in his head, world champions don't lay up that putt. And he didn't lay that up. He hit it. And it just felt like Paul McBeth said, yeah, I know it got tied. Just hang on 1 second. Let me fix that. And it felt the inevitability of Paul McBeth was starting to creep up again. It never felt like James Conrad was going to win this tournament. Not once, I don't think, did it feel like James Conrad was going to be the 2021 world champion until the throw-in and the Conrad chant started.
I mean, honest to God, I'm watching during the final round, and I think you would say the same thing, Josh. I'm paying attention to Kevin Jones. Yes. I'm paying attention to, Chris Dickerson making a move early in the round after having a huge round 4. Can Nate Sexton get back into the mix? These are the players that I'm keeping my eye on. And James Conrad was hanging around, but he was down early. He took a couple early bogeys. But when you look at the scorecard, after hole 4, off of back-to-back bogeys, he never bogeyed again and proceeded to birdie 10 of the final 12 holes, including the last 5 in a row. Obviously, with the cherry on top on 18. But, I mean, just played incredible disc golf to give himself an opportunity. That's the thing that you have to remember about the shot on 18. He had to play an amazing final 2/3 of the fort in order to even be in a position to win, or really not even win, to tie and take it to a playoff. So, of course, we'll all remember the shot on 18, but the thing that really set it up is that he was able to go into the back 9 and get 7 birdies. And, and that is in the face of Paul McBeth playing out of his mind. Okay? Here's the crazy thing about this whole tournament and what made this such a special moment. Paul McBeth had won. It was over. He was in to 18, up a stroke, in the fairway, with James Conrad having hit a tree and almost going in the water. It's over. Conrad throws an upshot, honestly a little bit short. He was like a little short of the corner where you want to be. And, McBeth's like, okay, I'm laying up, because obviously. And he'd won the tournament. And he hit some crazy putts. I mean, in the final 6 holes, he hit a 50-footer and 2 40-footers and did not miss a putt after hole 11. Period. And, I mean, he played like a champion. He did everything that he needed to do until 16. And somebody I think in our Discord did an analysis that, like, McBeth's forehand came out at the speed that most good, clean forehands on 16 came out at, that, like, the throw was the correct throw, and it just kind of popped up and rolled into the water instead of just settling. And, I mean, you can't even really fault McBeth. This was just a once-in-a-million performance from James Conrad.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so hard. You're not going to hear. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to hear from this show. I saw already on social media the question about Paul McBeth not getting 6X. Is this a slip up? No.
Did people really say that on social media?
Yes, I saw that on Facebook. I swear on my life I saw that.
Put the
I had to go look and make sure it wasn't a satire post, because no, McBeth played great, and especially in that final round, he played perfectly. He did everything right. The problem is that you had the man, the myth, and the legend James Conrad playing spoiler.
Wow, it's just something to see. And neither Conrad nor McBeth had a perfect round, but they shot the 2 best rounds of the day. And down the stretch, in the back 9, neither had a bogey. And I don't really think that you can look at the way that McBeth played in the final 9 holes and say anything other than the fact that he had put himself in an obvious position to win and just got sniped by a 247-foot sniper. I mean, it was something else. And
I didn't know an envy could kill somebody.
So, I mean, how about this from James Conrad? I again, like, you think about what this means to his legacy. You know, we've been talking a little bit about, like, you know, does this make him a Hall of Famer? You know, now has multiple major championships. He's been somebody who wins tour events on a regular basis. You know, Hall of Fame is a little bit weird in disc golf right now. It's kind of rewards commitment to the sport and like organizational abilities a little bit more than maybe on-course performance. I think that's going to change with time as, you know, we start to think about it more in terms of, you know, top players getting in and then having like a separate category for organizers, as we've talked about in the past. But, you know, to me, I don't really know what the bar should be for Hall of Fame inclusion, but like James Conrad has now, you know, the last tournament that he won, period. A tier, B tier, C tier, NT, elite, major, whatever, USDGC. So you talk about rising up to the big moments. James Conrad has been, as we discussed in our round 5 recap show, he's been okay this season. He's been good. He hasn't been at the level that maybe we've seen him in the past. But then, you know, when the lights are the brightest, here he comes and sticks around the whole time and then hits, you know, the what I think is quickly becoming consensus greatest shot of all time.
I think the discussion around Hall of Fame is interesting because, you know, I saw in that Discord when we were chatting, the last win he had was USDGC. Before that, it was what, MVP Open, or was it Idlewild and then MVP Open? Do you remember which order was that?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of like big Elite Series wins though in the past since 2018, so 3.5 years, he's got 4 wins under his belt at Elite Series events. I believe. I'm going off of just some discussions, but MVP Open, Idlewild, USDGC, and Worlds. It's interesting because that's not an exceptional, except for the majors, right? Out the majors, if you had just said someone had 4 Elite Series wins over 3.5 years, you'd think that's good. It's not bad.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, the fact that they are at the majors, it's something that as of right now and may forever be such a rare feat. There are not many people who have managed to both secure a USDGC and Worlds win. I think that does probably cement him in the Hall of Fame, but it's interesting to see and discuss as to like, what does this mean for James Conrad's future, about his future career? Is he, because even after USDGC win, he went cold last season, not just this season, last season too. He didn't win any major events last year. And so it's weird to feel like the world champion may make our top 5s now a little more regularly, but probably won't be our favorite at a lot of tournaments coming up. And it doesn't feel like our tier system where we've got the Paul Macbeth, Ricky Wysocki, Eagle McMahon, Calvin Heimberg. It doesn't feel like he penetrated and knocked one of them down. I think we have to consider him up there, maybe in the top 5 now, definitely in the top 5, but he doesn't feel like an inevitable favorite or a lock-in choice at all courses because of the lack of distance. I mean, he throws far, but that's just not, I mean, I don't know. He
throw
great.
Far. But
You're right.
What a great player in the woods. I mean, I think,
oh, yes.
You know, we've talked about it before, and it's like almost like you kind of take it for granted. But I mean, he's just he's an assassin in the woods. I mean, he was throwing some of the farthest drives out at the fort of anybody.
Yes.
And that's because he's able to control his power, throw slower speed discs a really, really, really long way, very straight, and you know, make it possible to put himself in a great position to score out in the woods. And you know, he kept up at Mulligan's. So, look, you know, there's so much to say about every player here. I mean, again, we're going to go deeper into the top 10, and talk about players, you know, who were playing well, but maybe had a blow up hole or struggled, in the final round. You know, we saw some really brutal situations for Lisa Fakis and Kevin Jones on hole 16. heartbreaking to watch, and we'll get to that stuff in Thursday's show. I want to get to some other topics. We also have a bunch of rapid fire questions to hit a little bit later on. So let's go to this. I've been saying it all week, and I actually mentioned it to a couple people, including you, Josh.
Yes.
Before the final round, I said, this is the greatest hole 18 on tour this year. There's just so much to like about hole number 18 at the Fort. You have the water carry. You have the guardian trees. You have, the landing zone, which is fairly tight. You have the dog leg to the right. Then you have all of the out of bounds. Plus you have this spectacular viewing area with the bleachers. And I literally all week I've been saying, like, in FPO, it's going to come down to 18. Like, look how tight the scores are between Paige and Katrina, and how much drama we've seen unfold on 18. And, think about how special it's going to be to have all those people there. And, like, obviously it played out to a level that no one could have anticipated. But 18 was really up to the billing. And I feel like we need more hole 18s like this. You think about most courses, their big signature hole is like 16 or 17. And a lot of times 18 is, it's like a nice hole, but it's not necessarily like a hole that really provides exceptional levels of drama. Mm-hmm. You could say that about a lot of top courses. This to me is like a model for big event hole 18s in the future.
Absolutely. And it's noteworthy for those who don't know the Fort well, that hole 18 is not a permanent hole. That is something that was designed explicitly for when they bring large events to the Utah Open and now Worlds. It's on what they call their championship layout. That is not the permanent 18. Hole 17 is actually cut in half on the regular layout at the Fort. So there's actually a basket halfway through 17, and then you play another T-pad, 2 17s basket from this weekend. And that's hole 18. You finish over by the pro shop. So it's not even to say that the course that wins the bid and has the major has to naturally have the hole 18 designed around a world championship. But I think it needs to have the capacity that you can create something exceptional, even temporarily, for the world championship. And that if, the Utah Open, as part of their bid, importantly, has a hole 18 that was able to deliver that kind of excitement. And like you said, I think that's something that a model moving forward, courses should look at the ways that they can modify their hole 18 to make them exceptional for a tournament that deserves exceptional.
Let's talk about the courses. We've had a chance to see it now over 5 rounds, finishing at the Fort, unbelievable drama. What are your thoughts, Josh, on how these courses played for a World Championship event?
I thought they were exceptional. I really, truly enjoyed watching these courses. And this is something that I mentioned in our discussion on one of the recap shows. It might have been round 4, but a lot of the pros were saying these aren't world-class courses, right? These aren't for a world championship. They're fine for what they are. That's a phrase I heard multiple times from a lot of people, right? Like staff, PDGA members, pros. They said these courses are fine for what they are. They're not world championship tier. And I think the reason why that's the case is because we say that pros have to have well-developed skills. It's even in the PGA's skill description about you need to be able to throw X number of upshots that land within a certain area. You need to be able to make X number of putts. You need to be able to throw this far. And they create and list all these skills as necessities that pros have. Again, I think that the elite level, those are very high. We set very high expectations as to what we should see on the putting green, for example. The reason I think these courses were so looked down upon is because while we pretend that all of those skills are equally valuable, that's not actually how we've interpreted them and utilized them in the disc golf world around the courses that we choose to put on Elite Series events. We don't consider putting to be equally valuable as distance. I believe the way that courses shape up, distance is a prerequisite. It is your pass to get in the door. And then the skills that are left are then evaluated after you have met the distance requirement. If you don't have the distance, it doesn't matter how good of a putter you are. And that's not as true in FPO. Heather Young, Owen Scoggins, they prove that isn't necessarily true for FPO. However, on the MPO side, if you cannot throw so far in terms of distance, then you cannot be, and that's, the fort was still true, right? You still had to throw a reasonably far shot for mulligans for the fort. You still needed 400 feet of power. But instead of 475, 450 as being the prerequisite, it made it far more accessible. And then it decreased the advantage of a key skill that I think a lot of players rely on. And that is what I would call elite distance, right? It's those footage that you can get after 450. However far you can throw above 425, 450 is typically the measurement of skill and distance in most Elite Series events. And the Fort didn't let you measure that. It kind of cut that skill out a little bit. The other thing that I think was exceptional about the Fort and Mulligans, and we talked about this, is a lot of players were putting closer to like 75 to 80% on the MPO side. Pretty low numbers, by about 10% from where I think most players' season averages are hovering around. And it's because the woods, the greens, both at Mulligans and the Fort, were guarded. They had the rollaways, they had the bunkers, they had danger, people were laying up. I mean, I watched James Conrad and Kevin Jones both lay up within 25 feet of a basket because of the danger behind it on an elevated basket. It challenged putting in a way that most courses don't. And so it felt like there were more misses. There were more misses. There were more layups. And I think that made for more drama, made it more exciting. So I thought the courses were fantastic.
I want to read an email from Scott. You can always reach us, upshot@ultiworld.com. We might read your email on the air. For everyone saying these aren't World's caliber courses, or there aren't enough par fours and fives, there's not enough distance, there's too much luck involved, it's time to adjust those opinions and admit you are wrong. These courses produce the best, most compelling disc golf tournament ever, with more players in the mix at the end than any other Worlds. This is what golf looks like. Strategy, pressure, emotions, the crowd, the build-up, the heartbreak, the ecstasy, the elusive vixen that is the best sport on the planet. Golf with discs. Some thoughts from Scott there. And, I mean, you have to admit, it was very compelling. And as you come down into the back nine of the final round, after 4.5 rounds are in the books, you still have a number of players up at the top, battling for the finish. And for people who are going to say, well, FPO is like just a 2-horse race. First of all, no, it wasn't. Because Lisa Fakis, if she hits the birdie putt on 16, instead of 4-putting, is very much in that battle at the top. And there were only 2 players on 18 who had a chance in MPO. And I guess the same is true of FPO as well, as people had fallen away. But it took a while in FPO for it to become just 2. And so you had, legitimately multiple potential paths to a champion late in the final round in both divisions. Now, I will say this. The Fort, I think, is pretty special. And look, are there improvements that could be made? I think so. I think there's holes where they need to take a tree or 2 out. I think that there's some holes where it feels like there's not really a fair line that, players with a great shot are going to get to the green. Players with a great shot, have a 50-50 chance of getting to the green on some holes. And I don't really like that. I don't like that level of variance. I love the challenge of the greens. I love a number of the holes on the course, but there's a couple in the middle stretch that just feel like we're just going to spam trees in the fairway and say that's a disc golf hole. And I'm not a big fan of that. But mostly I like the Fort. Mulligans, it's so open. And yes, the greens are technical, but it just doesn't, to me, it's not, it needs work to become what I would call, I don't know, a World's caliber course. If you're going to play a golf course, I do think distance should be something that gets tested at a World Championships. I think, there are holes out there, particularly for FPO, where the top throwers definitely had an advantage. And a little
we saw
bit
that in scores.
FPO, but not to the same extent. And we did see that in scores, particularly in FPO. And I just think, it's not a modern golf course style layout. It probably needs an extra 1,000 to 1,500 feet of distance on it. And that's because, you should be able to reward your Eagles and your Garrett Gurtheys with some holes that are unreachable if you don't have 550. Because, it's Worlds. And like, we want to test all those different skills. And I think the idea of having two courses at Worlds sets that up. So mulligans, I do like some of the greens. I really do. I think there's some really cool greens, especially with the, basket kind of like up on top of a hill with sand traps on either side. That is really a cool test. And it's different than we see. A lot of courses are testing your shots in the air. Mulligans, and Paul Macbeth said this in an interview, I think we had on the show a couple days ago. Mulligans tests your ability to land the disc because there's no obstacles in the air. And I definitely don't want to see that become like a typical like routine type of course. I think it's like it's kind of a change of pace. So anyway, that's my thoughts. I was okay with mulligans, not my favorite. The Fort, I'm glad there were 3 at the Fort. I'm glad we finished at the Fort. That was fun. It was fun. And I got another email I'll read real quick from Andrew. It's almost too long to read the whole thing. As someone who's not at the tournament and watched it on the Disc Golf Network, the closeness of the scores kept me coming back for the next round. I'm a subscriber to DGN and have been since it started. And last year, the tournaments were must watch. This year, I watched maybe the first or second round, and maybe we'll turn it on as background noise for the final day. But I often just find myself checking scores on UDisc or checking Ultra World Disc Golf the next day to see who has won. I'm not sure why my DGN watching has fallen off. It feels like there's been a large increase in the wide open ball golf courses, which to me get boring to watch, especially when there are 3 in a row. So this brings me to 2021 Worlds. The Mulligans course was okay to watch. There were so many holes that everyone could get to that you had to be perfect, which I think brought its own kind of pressure. Then we go to the Fort. I understand filming in the woods can be difficult, but I thought that the DGN crew did a phenomenal job at it. What I enjoyed the most was that to shoot well, you had to be able to control your disc, you needed to have multiple shots in your skill set, and you need to be able to hit lines. I feel like these are 3 skills that never really get tested at the Heiserfest golf courses that are becoming the mainstay of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. The pros are not wrong, though. There is not a lot of scoring separation, but the tight scores also make it a must-watch tournament and rounds. You did not know who was going to come out on top. The final day was can't miss viewing, no doubt about it. And so then just more goes on to ask about, what should our priorities be? Pleasing the players, pleasing the on-site spectators, pleasing the watching from home, the biggest audience. We'll actually take a look at the audience in just a second. There were a lot of questions about how they were going to handle crowds at the Fort, and Josh, honestly, it went fine.
Yeah. There's two things to note, though. First off, we talked about this in our shout out on episode 4, I believe. Noelle, exceptional. And I think what was exceptional about Noelle is not only was she directing the spectators incredibly well, but she was also directing her crew incredibly well. And I think the fact Noelle was a volunteer. If you didn't have someone of Noelle's caliber in that position directing the crowd, it could have been a nightmare.
It could have been.
It could have been an absolute, utter disaster without Noelle. That is kudos to the tournament staff for recognizing how good she is at it and picking her. That needs to be a paid position of someone who knows and is comfortable doing that. And,
I agree with that.
And you should have crowd control, like kind of like security almost.
Honest to God, the PDGA should contact Noelle and say, you did a fantastic job. We would like to fly you out and put you up for our World Championships and other large major tournaments with big crowds, if future tournaments, if you're available and, cover your room and board or whatever, to come out and be the head crowd control person.
Absolutely.
Like, honestly.
Yes, 100%. 100% they should do that, because otherwise that could have been a nightmare. And here's the reason why. The fort was a touch tight. I mean, there were people who, rather than following the crowd, would go watch a chase card, or they would go over and jump over to 16 to 18 spectator area and just watch some cards come in, because it was really difficult to see the shots on, I would say, about half the holes if you weren't right at the front of the enormous crowd. So it went well. It wasn't the best, but I think that while we, yes, should focus on being able to ensure that spectators are able to participate, I also think that it's not a disqualifier for courses, because I think we learned today or this week that you can successfully have a woods tournament with spectators present, being able to enjoy and participate in the action.
We're going to take a quick break. More to come after this intermission. We're going to be talking about live versus post-produced and how that played out this weekend. We're going to be taking a look at the record number of live viewers. We are going to talk a little bit about Paige Pierce and breaking down in comparison to what we saw from Paul McBeth, the other 5-time champion, and missing the Mando. A lot of talk about the missed Mando and her not taking the stroke for the missed Mando. And then we have some rapid fire listener questions as well. Stay with us. It's the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. In just 2 days, Pound is reopening its custom programs on July 1st at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. So set your alarms now. Get in there. Get yourself the bag of your dreams customized just the way that you like it. Check out your options at pounddiscgolf.com. And by Skybreed Discs, a modern online retailer that's got all of the amenities that you're looking for when you're buying discs online. Box shipping, free shipping on orders over $49, very cheap flat rate shipping otherwise, a wide variety of discs available, and they're a preferred partner of Ledgestone and the Great Lakes Open, so they've got a ton of awesome plastic. Check out all the options and save 10% with code WORLDS21, and what a Worlds it was. Go to skybreeddiscs.com to find out more. Welcome back to the Upshot. So obviously a lot of talk about the live coverage this weekend. The obvious benefits of watching live. And, I think some folks may find themselves watching the live coverage more in the future. Imagine missing this moment live and then having to try to relive it after everybody else has experienced it and everybody's been talking about it and people are texting their friends. I've had people texting me, like, I have 5 different group chats going with people and we're all still trying to process what happened. Missing that moment in real time, I think is just, I feel for you. I am sorry for you that you choose to wait to watch the post-production, because you really do, in my opinion, miss out on the holy cow, what did we just see moment that cannot possibly translate to a post-produced video. It just can't. And obviously I've been a live disc golf bull for a long time, but I think some other people are going to get converted this week. Jomez came out with the video of the final round, lead card, and for me it was okay. It did not convey the oh my God, what do we just watch moment, because of course, Big Germ and the commentators, they all watched it in real time.
Right.
How do you remanufacture that? I don't think you can. And that's not any fault of Jomez. And look, that'll probably be the definitive version of that people watch. When people want to go back and watch this again, they're not going to go to DGN and scroll through 6 hours of tape to find the moment that it happens. They're going to go on Jomez and they're going to scroll right to hole 18 on YouTube, and they're going to watch it. And, that's an important thing, right? You have this very clean, full HD copy of the round up on YouTube, and I'm sure it's going to do amazing views and all that. But if you're a big fan of disc golf, and if you're listening to the show, you almost certainly are, I don't think you're never going to want to miss that moment again. Like you have to tune in and watch that kind of moment in real time to really truly appreciate how special it was. It's like if you watch a buzzer beater on Sports Center versus watching the game and seeing it happen in real time. It's just not the same.
It's absolutely not. And while Charlie, you've been the live coverage bull for a long time, well before I was on the show, I was in the other camp. I really enjoyed post-produced coverage. I thought it was clean, as I was in college and I was working full time. So in terms of time, like, I appreciated that condensed HD version that I felt was clean. I thought had the nice features of players or interviews that I thought Jomez was the highest quality. I still think Jomez's quality is probably unmatched in the sport. I think Disc Golf Network is catching up. I think Jomez still probably has, in terms of quality though, the cleanest production. That being said, I will never miss another major in live coverage ever again. Never again. And I think that it's noteworthy that when people say, well, the time commitment or whatever the reasoning may be about why you're not tuning into live coverage, that I think of other major sports. The Super Bowl, for example, takes just as long as a finals round of a major. Absolutely. Nobody
think about watching 7 games in the World Series.
Oh, right. Same thing.
4-hour games.
But when those playoffs and those championships roll around, I absolutely block out my day. Like, no, I'm not going to do yard work when the Super Bowl's on. Yes, I get that. Like people have family obligations, not on Super Bowl Sunday unless they want to come watch it with me. For me, that's how the majors in disc golf should be, and I think that are going to be. And I think that it's going to start moving more. And I think it bodes really well for Disc Golf Network that the past 2 tournaments have delivered. Portland Open, close, incredible finish, and obviously unmatched by both FPO and MPO at this tournament. But it bodes very well for disc golf, I think, and live coverage to just have that kind of storyline and reaction.
Chad emailed in upshot@ultraworld.com. I've never watched a full round of live disc golf, mostly because I just never have the time, and sometimes it can feel a little too slow to keep my interest. I know you talk a lot about the story not being able to be told in post-production, that you get the shots but not the drama or the nuance. And up until this past Saturday, I would not have agreed with you. Earlier in the day, I opened the DGN app just in time to see the 18th hole with Kat and Paige. Luckily, I was free on Saturday, and what happened there was enough to make me want to watch the MPO round. Well, as you know, it was a decision I am very grateful I made. I now understand the drama and the story that is being told before your eyes that you miss in post. I understand the excitement of something happening in real time and having your group chats light up like the 4th of July with people freaking out about what's going on. When we met up for golf the morning after, we all talked about where we were when Conrad threw in, what our reactions were, and we relived it together again and again throughout the round. My mind has been opened when it comes to what live coverage can give you that post-production can't. While the same kind of excitement of that moment may possibly never happen again, I'll be looking for the time to watch more live coverage in the future. Tune in when I can, and I hope to get to experience one of those types of moments again. And I might even stop giving them a hard time about insisting they watch their sports live. I imagine that Chad will not be alone in that sentiment. And, I mean, take a look at the numbers. People tuned in. This was record viewership. Total concurrent stream. So that means people watching at the same time. So with their TV or their phone or their computer with the stream pulled up. When you add together those watching on DGN and on YouTube, where it was being streamed for free, the women's coverage had 16,000 concurrent live viewers, which I think is a big record. And the men's had 36,000 at one point late in the round. 36,000. That's not necessarily to say that's the number of people. The number of people watching was probably higher than that because I'm sure there were people who had friends over and they were all watching on one screen. But that means that 36,000 different people had a stream pulled up. That's pretty amazing. I forget what the previous record was. I think it was around 20,000. So we're talking about a big bump. And I mean, obviously it's easy to see why. You had, extremely close matches heading into the 18th hole. People are going to click on the link when they see it in their social media. Paul McBeth up by 1 stroke going into 18, click. Who's not going to click? I don't know that there's more that needs to be said. I mean, this is not some kind of like post-production is over, because that's not true, right? DGN live coverage, you don't want to go back and watch that again. Maybe you want to watch the moment on 18, but you're not going to go back and rewatch a 5-hour round. Having the condensed footage in full HD posted to YouTube, that's extremely valuable for people who want to rewatch, for people who are getting introduced to the sport, right? You're not going to just be like, oh, disc golf's pretty cool, and then start watching DGN. Oh yeah, I'm going to watch 5-hour rounds, both MPO and FPO, so 10 hours a day for 5 days. That's not how it's going to happen, right? People are going to discover it on Jomez. They're going to continue to grow, and that's a gateway drug to DGN and live coverage.
Honestly, I know it sounds odd, but I think this is something that actually was really good for Jomez. And the reason why is less than a month ago, we were talking about Disc Golf Network losing subscribers, losing viewership, that they were very steadily declining in those numbers. And we asked, is there going to reach a point where Disc Golf Network is going to push out and either exclusively reserve the rights to Final Round and make Jomez cover Chase Card? Or are they just going to put such an astronomical price that, yeah, maybe Jomez still does it, but that the Pro Tour is just making money hand over fist from Jomez in order for that coverage to happen? And now I think that the two, Disc Golf Network and Jomez, have separated into their own lanes again. You have them both. They both are excellent for different reasons. And I think Disc Golf Network just reproved why it's so worthwhile and worth your money and time to tune into that. And without having to tear down Jomez to do it. And so I think that we were on a collision course for a while, and I don't think it was an imminent collision course. I think that just those directions eventually felt inevitable, and they may still happen, but it feels like a course correction for both of them in a way that kind of settles into their own lanes again, that it feels less inevitable to me. And maybe that's just my incorrect speculation.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think it's a bit of an overreaction to this one tournament. I think, DGN viewership being a little bit down, that has more to do with the fact that, you can't watch every week. Like, there's almost
Absolutely.
Too much disc golf going on. Like, how do you watch live? Like, I don't want to watch the Resistance Disc Open. Sorry, I don't. Right? I'm getting ready for Worlds. I just don't want to watch that. So then, Worlds comes along and boom, you see great numbers because it's Worlds. It's the biggest tournament of the year. People want to tune in. People want to watch what's going on. And I think that the Des Moines Challenge is not going to pull the same kind of numbers. And a lot of people who maybe are hardcore fans might be like, yeah, I'll just catch the Jomez. That's the value of it. But here's the thing. Jomez is still going to have to pay, right? That is the thing that I do think that the Pro Tour folks see them as complementary parts and not as direct competitors like post-production and live. But I also think that it's very clear that there's, if you're able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising revenue by being able to show this, you're going to be expected to have to pony up. And I'm sure that number is going to continue to go up. It's a rising tide right now, certainly lifting all boats.
Sure.
Okay. Paige Pierce in round 4 at Mulligan's on hole 10 missed the triple Mando. She went over the top of the triple Mando, and man, the online comments were just hammering her for the rest of the weekend, all through the final round, because she did not take a stroke for missing the Mando. So let me give you my perspective on this. So if you were watching the live coverage and you watch in real time, it was impossible to tell whether that disc made or missed the Mando. The strip of fabric or whatever it was that marked the top of the Mando was maybe this wide. We're talking like 3-4 inches. And the disc was extremely close. And it was like literally from the T-cam, it was impossible to tell whether it went over or under until it was slowed down to frame by frame. And we could see that the shadow of the disc cast its shadow onto the fabric. And it was like, oh, she missed it. Now, her card mates couldn't tell. Paige couldn't tell. On the tee, she throws her hands up like, I'm not sure whether I made it or missed it. It clearly was close. Apparently, Ian Anderson of Central Coast Disc Golf told me this. Apparently, there were spectators screaming that she made it, that she made the Mando, who were down over by the Mando. There was I don't know if there was a spotter or no spotter, but either way, there was nobody had a definitive look at whether it went over or under. So the decision from the card was basically, Paige, do what you think happened. And she said, okay, I guess I made it. They're unable to use video evidence. That's in the rule book. You can't do that. So she didn't take the stroke. Now, had she won this tournament by a stroke, which obviously was very possible, I think there would have been a lot of outrage about this situation. But I feel like people are accusing Paige of cheating and saying that she knew she missed it, but she intentionally, didn't take the stroke, even though she knew she missed it. But I have to say, I have not seen evidence for that at all. I certainly didn't notice anything like that watching it happen in real time. And it was incredibly close. And really, we were only able to tell because we had the ability to look at it in frame by frame slow motion replay.
Well, and I hope that clears up, because I've seen a lot of on Reddit primarily, which don't trust what you read on Reddit all the time, folks. That's an important lesson that I hope you take away from this show. But one of the narratives on Reddit is that like Paige gaslighted her team, or the card mates, into believing that it went underneath the Mando, and argued vehemently that was the case. And so if you look at the live coverage though, and this narrative, I don't think that narrative is necessarily true. I don't love the cheating narrative, that it was something she did to gain an unfair advantage. And biggest of all though, it's in the rule book that discretion goes to the player. So if their answer is, we could not tell because they had a 4-inch strip of fabric because they're triple Mando, and everyone says, we've got no idea, like we have no idea of how to call this, then the rule book says you give it to Paige. You default in her favor. And so I think that they called it right, as right as they could have from that card. Not right in the sense that it went under the Mando, but the procedure that was followed, I think, was as effective as it could have been.
And to me, it just opens up the questions about how this should play out in the future. I know there's arguments on both sides about using video evidence. It would have been a quick, objective, yes, you missed the Mando if you're able to look at the videotape. I know the arguments against that are that, not every card is filmed. It changes things if you have cameras on it. Yes, but we're talking about the leaders in the leaderboard, and we have this objective, did it make it, did it miss it question, and the ability to say, it did or it didn't. In my mind, that should be allowable. But I haven't given this many, many hours of consideration like the people who write the rule book. So I understand why it is how it is. The thing I will say is that, number one, there should be standards about Mandos that allow us to have a better, that strip should be 2 feet thick, because then you have more of a sense of contrast, right? It's like a foul pole in baseball. They add the extra layer on the side with the, I don't know, with mesh grate,
or whatever,
so that you have more of an ability to have the perspective, because it can be really hard to tell sometimes whether it goes, on one side or the other of the foul pole. So you need the same thing with Mandos. Also, you need a spotter for stuff like that. There needs to be somebody whose job it is to stand right underneath and look and see. That kind of stuff is where we need to get better in disc golf. right? We can't continue to have situations where players are forced to make these very difficult decisions from hundreds of feet away about, did I go in bounds here, out of bounds here, over the Mando, under the Mando? If her card mates had seen it go over, they would have said, I saw it go over. I'm sure it went over. You missed the Mando. You need to take the stroke. None of them said that. What does that tell you? Does it tell you that they weren't paying attention or that it was really hard to tell? I think there's like kind of this like conspiracy. Maybe people a little frustrated with Paige Pierce this week because of some of her comments before the tournament, talking about how she's the best player of all time and she's trying to prove that. I don't know, but to me, it was not at all clear in real time. And I mean, it would have been a controversy. Don't get me wrong. Like if she won by a stroke, like you have to talk about the asterisk question. So it's kind of nice that it didn't end up that way. But to say that she was actively cheating when basically everything played out exactly to the way that the rule book says that you're supposed to play it out, I mean, I don't really think you blame the player in that situation. All right, let's hit some rapid fire listener questions. We got a ton of questions over on Twitter that we didn't get to for our round 5 recap show. These are going to be quick answers. Here's one from Dana Vici. Josh, I'll let you take this. How cool is James Conrad? Clutching up like that and then spits out all the right words during his interview.
Cool as a cucumber.
Cool as a cucumber. What are the odds that Conrad makes that shot? This is from Sabatis Disc Golf. We kind of talked about it in the previous show. I mean, I still think it's probably less than 1 in 100. I mean, we're talking about a sub 1% shot, given the conditions, the challenge of the shot kind of around the right-hand dog leg. And having so many people in attendance.
Agreed.
Like 0.5%. Let's see. I got no questions. This is from Dean. Just absolutely speechless after the best worlds of all time. Convince me otherwise. Do you want to convince Dean otherwise?
No, absolutely not.
Philo's Albatross is the most amazing shot I've ever seen. This is from Aaron. Did Conrad's shot move Philo's to number 2?
Yes. I'm gonna say it. And
I'm with you.
I think
I'm with you.
I think that there is a legitimate debate about the skill, about the whatever that might be. Philo did not expect his shot to go in. James did. From the second he lined up that shot, James knew that was going to go in. That's what he said. He said in his interview. He said, you have to believe that you can throw that in.
First world championship win for MVP discs? Yes. Mm-hmm. I can say that pretty confidently. Does any other event even compare, let alone something of this stature? This is from Disc Golf Poppy.
I think
I will say this.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Let me take this really quick.
Okay.
There have been some legendary battles in the past.
Yes.
When Climo and Schultz went like however many holes it was, like 12 playoff holes at USDGC. Like, I know this is back in the day and that like a lot of our audience will not even know what I'm talking about right now, but
incredible.
It's on YouTube. It's crazy.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people also feel that Paul McBeth versus Ricky Wysocki at 2014 Portland Worlds had that same level of just back and forth. Two best players on earth just going shot for shot down the playoff. Like, those moments are special in their own way, in a way that kind of like a miracle Hail Mary type moment isn't quite the same. It's up to you how you feel about those situations. Do you want to see that back and forth ultra competitive battle, or do you want to see the miraculous moment, the holy shot, as it's being called in some places? Like, is that your idea of greatness in sports? So I don't have the answer for you. I think for me, that kind of a crazy, unbelievable moment is pretty special.
I agree. And I mean, I think the fact that it was Worlds just adds so much to it. This would have been wild if it was any other tournament, but the fact that it was Worlds just makes it truly exceptional. But I think of also like 2017, I want to say it was like the Hall of Fame Open, but I might be completely wrong about that. Ricky has a huge lead, blows it in the final round, gets caught up from the chase card by Simon and Paul, 3-way playoff, and hole 1, Simon lays down like a 550-foot roller through the woods. Like it's the moment adds, the nature, the pressure, the build up, that adds to it significantly. I think there are some, even Calvin at USDGC last year was just, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time watching Calvin make that charge through the pouring rain to end in what was heartbreak, true heartbreak for him. So there's lots of incredible moments. I don't know if I could definitively call this as like the absolute best. It's close though. It's definitely, it has a strong contender status to take that spot.
Well, we'll have to see how as we settle into the next couple of weeks and let it really sink in. Maybe we'll come back with our list of top 5 moments or something like that in disc golf history. Okay, much more to come. Thursday's show, we will tackle the leaderboard a bit more. We're going to look down and talk about some of the players, how they performed this weekend relative to expectations. And continue talking about the World Championships. Get your questions in, upshot@ultiworld.com. We want to hear from you. And we've got a very exciting subscriber bonus coming this week as well. I'll give more information about that on Thursday. That is going to do it for today's show. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.